I went out last night and I did one set for the night. Basically, it was like a one shot. It's not like I intended to do it that way. When I go out to film, I actually don't want to do one set for the night because it's the worst way to do it. But it just ended up being that way. And then I watched it afterwards. I watched it with my 4 assistants who were like out filming me. And it was an amazing set. I walked in, owned it. There was 2 girls. The friend actually left and just like said, "You can have her," basically, and went home. And then I ended up like pulling the girl, making out with her and taking her a bunch of different places. But then we watched the video afterwards, and when we were watching, it was like nothing was happening. It was like literally nothing was happening. And that's what my game usually looks like when it's good, right? Like it's not like this shock value, like insulting girls type of stuff. It's literally nothing was happening. And I was presenting it to my 4 people that had filmed me, and trying to like explain them, and they obviously had seen this set that from a distance looked so amazing, right? From a distance it looked so good, because I walked over, owned it, the girl left, I took the other girl home, made out with her. And then when they saw it actually up close, it was like nothing was happening. And I felt like disappointed showing it to them. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, so yeah, look, I did nothing and it worked. There's the learning lesson. And I was trying to figure out what to teach them out of it, and I looked closer. And I realized something I had never realized before, which is that most of what was going on in that set, most of it was going so well, and what does go well in most of my good sets, it's actually not what happens when I'm talking, okay? It's actually what happens when the girl is talking. I came up with a word for it, or a label for it last night. I called it reverse game, basically. And the idea is that if you can get the girl talking, if you can get the girl participating and investing in the conversation and doing something, then by just the way you look at her, whether you're judging or not, whether your attention's on her or not, where you give her attention, where you take your attention away, that's game also, right? And it's not verbal. It's not something that you have to have like a witty line for. It's not something you need a lot of technique for. But 2 things, actually. One, being incredibly focused in the interaction, being entirely present to what's going on, as opposed to being 25% effort here, 25 here, 25%, and then just a little fraction on the girl. Being entirely invested and entirely focused on the conversation is part 1, but then also, what are you doing with your focus? You can communicate so much emotionally there, based on your focus, based on your body language. And so I realized that at this advanced level, 12 years on, that's what I was actually doing. Was that most of the good things that were happening in the set weren't because of what I was saying. They weren't because of what I was doing per se, in terms of the input I was putting in explicitly. It was how I was playing off of her and how I was reacting to her input. And that was actually a really interesting revelation for me. I also realized too, after seeing that, I went back and looked at a lot of my my other sets that I had in the other 4 days I've done of recording so far. And almost every time I went to make out with a girl, I actually, without knowing this, I wasn't aware of this until seeing it. Most of the time when I made out with the girl, I made out with the girl when she was talking. Right? She'd be talking and I'd just be looking at her, staring at her, and then at some point, sometimes I'd be like, and then make out, or sometimes I would just, shake my head and make out or whatever. But a lot of the time, it was when she was actually talking. So that was my sort of new revelation in game, is that when I was actually talking, a lot of it could be boring, dull, mundane topics. And I mean, like, I guess, speak for a living now, so the things I'm going to come up with off the top of my head are not the worst in the world, but those weren't the really gamey things, and I didn't have to be gamey. I didn't have to use a lot of lines, I didn't have to use a lot of push-pull, because you can achieve that when she's talking as well. So I don't know, that's not like a complete, fully formed topic, it's something that just happened last night, but it's something I wanted to share with you guys as sort of an introduction to this game. And I also want to kind of put out there that I am the boring guy in RSD, and I'm actually really happy with that label. Right? I mean, a lot of people don't consider me that. That's how I consider myself. I consider myself the boring guy in RSD. I consider myself the guy in RSD where you see me talking to a girl, and it's like seriously watching paint dry, but then she just leaves with me and goes and fucks me. And I like that, because to me that means that I'm not getting it through having to be like super charismatic or entertaining or engaging. While I do want to be all those things, obviously, but to me that seems like the purest form of game. That's the purest form of game, is when it's actually coming from you without you having to put the effort in, when it's coming from almost like from your soul. And so I'm really, really proud of that label. And so when you guys address questions to me, that's one area that I would also sort of steer your questions towards. Well, one of the other observations that I had recently, I was in London last weekend, and I was actually instructing with Ozzy, who's our instructor out there. And with regards to these questions about sort of like fear and entitlement, Ozzy is pretty much the man with regards to that. Like his entire approach to the game is focused on, he calls it fear technology, overcoming fear, dealing with your entitlement, dealing with what you feel okay doing and what you don't feel okay doing. And so I'll tell you a little bit about sort of the structure of the way that we taught, the things that I learned from him in teaching with him, and how it kind of affected the boot camp overall. And that gets to fear, and that gets to your issue as well. So one of the things, the way I tend to run my boot camp, I tend to be very like, I'll start out with a student and just get in the field and do approaches, and then I'll tailor it from there. If he seems to need one thing, I'll veer off in that direction. If he seems to need another thing, I'll veer off in that direction. Ozzy's approach is a little different than mine in that he tries to take care of a lot of things preemptively. He tries to take care of a lot of things before they happen. Okay, and the biggest thing he tries to take care of before it happens is fear. Right? He wants to basically create this experience where by the time you get to the club, by the time you're approaching the girls, you are absolutely fearless. You have no fear, and it's almost like stepping down in intensity from what it was before. And having seen it in effect, having seen it in practice, I actually really, really like it. It was one of the more fun boot camps I've had in a really, really long time. But so what his philosophy is, some of the things that we did, we would start off and he'd make the students stand in the middle of like a square of people with people passing by constantly, like tons and tons of people, huge crowds of people passing by. And he'd make them tell a story out like very, very loud about something mildly embarrassing. Right, about like their like Lord of the Rings comic book collection or something like that, loudly on the street in public. Something they're a little embarrassed about. And then he'd make them then he'd constantly escalate it, like push it to the next level. So the next one would be like do the same thing, but like hang on a lamppost, like looking gay. and then we say switch, and then you have to like hump the lamppost while talking, and then you go back to looking gay. Right, and the idea here is that whatever you're going to be doing in those exercises is far more embarrassing than anything that's going to happen to you with the girls. And so by the time you get to that interaction with the girls, you are sort of desensitized to it and you don't care. You don't give a fuck. You've already been through the worst of your fears. And so now, because you can't have that fear, you're actually able to be present in the moment and actually have a real interaction, right? The other exercise that I really liked that he had us do, excuse me, I had a little smoothie on the way here, so excuse me for the burps. But the other exercise that he had us do was just walk from point A to point B with a moving set of a couple girls. And your goal is not to pick them up. Your goal is not to flirt with them, not to get a phone number, not to have any outcome. Your goal is just to still be walking with them by the time they get there. Your goal is just to last in the set, just to withstand the fear, just to withstand the pain. And I really, really like that as well. It goes along with a model I've had of fear and pain for a long time, which is that all of that stuff, it's just chemicals in your body, right? What is fear? Fear literally is a chemical in your body. It's a combination of adrenaline and some sort of interpretation that gives it another chemical, right? So with any chemical, the more you're exposed to it, the more you get used to it, the less it affects you, right? If you drink every single day, it takes more alcohol to get you drunk. If you expose yourself to fear, it takes more of that chemical to actually make you take on the behaviors of being afraid, okay? So the best response to fear, the best way to deal with fear is to actually put yourself in that fearful situation and, if possible, intensify the fear. And if possible, create a situation that's even more scary than the thing you're actually afraid of, so that you get used to the chemicals, so that by the time the actual situation comes around, it's not as terrifying for you, okay? And you can do it a couple different ways. One is to start with something you're not very scared of and gradually build up and go to something a little more scary, a little more scary, a little more scary. Or if you're really daring, just jump right off the cliff and go to the scariest thing, right? Go to the absolute scariest thing. But the biggest way to deal with any of that stuff is through repetition, right? How do you deal with fear? How do you deal with those nerves? Basically, you put yourself through that situation over and over and over again and give your body and your brain proof that you're gonna live, right? That's what your brain wants. It wants proof, not promises. You can sit in your little, keyboard jockey behind the computer theorizing and be like, well, obviously a girl's not gonna kill me for approaching her, and you can know that, but until you go out in the field and actually get that proof, your brain, your body doesn't know it on a primal level, and you're still gonna have that chemical, and you're still not used to it, all right? So that's the best way to deal with fear. And fear and entitlement are very closely linked, right? Fear and entitlement, definitely closely linked. If you look at at evolution, at meeting people in prehistory, that was a big event. If you lived in a tribe of 20 people and you're going to meet basically maybe another 60 people in your entire lifetime, every single time you meet a new person, that's a huge, huge life event. That's a very important event in your life, okay? And so it makes sense to take that very seriously. It makes sense to be very fearful about it. It makes sense that you want to really get up for it and you want to have a lot of adrenaline. Now in a tribe of 7 billion people, you meet a new person every fucking 5 seconds if you walk on the street. And so it doesn't actually mean that same thing, okay? Even more to the point, if you're gonna live in a small tribe for a really, really long period of time, you're not gonna do anything in the first 10 minutes of an interaction that's gonna make your life massively better, right? You're gonna be found out for who you are over a period of time, regardless how good your first impression is. But you can make a bad enough first impression that you'll fuck your life over in that context, right? You can go hit on the wrong girl who's the chief's wife and end up dead in that context. So from a primal level, we are programmed to be fearful on that initial interaction. We're programmed for that. It helped keep our ancestors alive, right? But that's like our tailbone now. It's like that little tiny like bump at the back of our buttocks. It doesn't mean anything anymore. It's some little vestigial thing of evolution that doesn't help us anymore, right? But what you need to do is understand that, know that it doesn't help us, and be man enough, strong enough to allow our logic to overcome our emotions and push ourselves through in spite, right? And again, you can do it logically, you can push yourself through logically, but in the end of the day, if you can get it logically plus emotionally, that's when you actually have it, right? If you have to actually think about it, then there's that hesitation from the stimulus in the world, comes into your body, you have to think about it, and then you react to it. By the time that all happens, it's too slow. It's not natural, and there's that incongruence, that lack of entitlement that the girl will see. But if it's instinctive, if it's your gut reaction, and it's something you've practiced by habit and gotten used to, or if you even don't feel that chemical in the first place, then that's when it's instantaneous, that's when you don't flinch, and that's when you look entitled to the girl. That's when the girl gives you the shit test, and it's not like you even passed the shit test, you just don't even realize it happened, right? You're just like above even thinking of it as a shit test because it's so instinctive for you. And that's what true entitlement is. And so when you're talking about, I forget whose question it was in the back, but when you're talking about girls that you don't feel entitled to, when you don't feel entitled to a girl, when you do feel that fear of a girl, it's gonna come through naturally, okay? How many people, this is really a weird topic for an RSD thing that's gonna come up here. How many people here have ever studied NLP in any way, shape, or form? Yeah? All right, cool. So a decent amount of people, which is fair. I mean, a lot of the pickup community started out through a lot of concepts from NLP, to be fair. There's one concept I really, really like, which I'm gonna kind of address to all you guys. Those of you who have taken NLP courses or studied it will be familiar with this, but it's the concept called go first. So go first basically means that anything that you want the other person to feel in the interaction, you need to feel first. Anything you want to happen in the interaction, you need to make happen, okay? So if you want to get people into a calm state of mind, say this is basically originally for hypnotists, but it works for everybody. If you want to get someone calm, you're not going to talk to them like this and be like, so as you feel yourself calming down, you can just see your heart rate starts to slow down and your breathing starts to, if you're talking in that fast voice and you're not calm, then they are not going to become calm. But on the other hand, if you slow down and you take your time and you relax, then everybody else can relax. Does that make sense? So if you want a girl to feel turned on, you should get turned on in set. Jeffy claims that in every set that he does, he gets hard. At least a little bit. Right? He has one video he likes to show during his hot seat where the girl turns around and he goes, heh heh. That's like the little like subtitle on the screen is heh heh heh. And he goes, that is the sound effect of me becoming hard. And he says it kind of flippantly, but it's actually true. The fact that he is turned on makes it easier for her to be turned on, right? I often say to my students, if you can't talk to a girl about sex, how are you gonna have sex with a girl, right? If you can't be open with yourself about the fact that you're turned on, how do you expect her to be okay with being turned on in your presence, right? And it's the same with a lot of other things. It's the same with being comfortable. It's the same with being excited. It's the same with being glad to be in the conversation, etc. It's the same with being focused. Okay? If you're unfocused and all over the place, she's probably going to be unfocused and all over the place. If you're happy to be there, if you're enjoying the interaction, she's probably going to enjoy the interaction. If you feel like you'd rather go do something else, she'll feel that as well. All right? That's another thing that I've learned a lot on camera is certain times on camera this will happen. You're running a set and it's going really, really well. And you could definitely continue with the girl. But you've gotten as far as you're going to get tonight. You've gotten as far as you're going to get with her tonight. And if your goal is that you're out to do filming, the smartest thing for you to do at that moment is cut the interaction off and go back out somewhere else and go film. Because you have your crew there, they're, taking time out of their day, out of their life to help you out. So you want to cut it off and go film. The second that thought enters your mind, the set starts to go south instantly. Right? The second you're thinking, I want to cut this off so that I can go film some more, I don't know how or why, but the girls can fucking sense it. And you get the weirdest reaction from them because it's not like they don't like you. And it's not like they feel like they're, overly entitled to you or they feel like they're bored or anything like that. They just somehow get this feeling like you will never follow up with them. Like you just legitimately don't care about them. And they'll actually vocalize some of the weirdest things. They'll be like, I can tell you're really good at meeting girls. Why are you here with me? Why aren't you out meeting some other girl? Like these weird insecure things. And the fact of the matter is it's extremely intuitive on their part because they're pretty much right. They're pretty much right. Now they're right for the wrong reason, right? Because in that moment I do want to go pick up other girls, not because I'm not enjoying them, not because I'm not enjoying them. In fact, a lot of times I stay with them because I am enjoying the good interaction and I try and actually take it somewhere and be a real person in the interaction. But they can sense it. As soon as you're not present, as soon as you're not fully there with them, as soon as your intention isn't what it was before, they can actually sense it. It's all very zen, very woo-woo, but it's very much the case, right? And so what I'm actually encouraging you guys to do within the context of your interaction, I put out a video about this a few weeks ago, I guess, but is to try as best you can to be fully focused and fully present in whatever the interaction is. Realize that there is no past and there is no future. All you have is that moment with the girl. And if you're in that moment, the right things will come out. If you're not in that moment, the wrong things will come out and it'll become very obvious in just subtle little ways. Subtle little ways. Why is it that, this isn't gonna get to screening yet, but we'll get there, I promise. Why is it that certain times you'll meet a girl and she's ready to go fuck you in the bathroom in 5 minutes, and other times you'll meet a girl and it'll take 30 hours for 4 dates before she wants to kiss you? What's the difference? Now part of it has to do with the girl. Let's be real, let's be honest. Part of it has to do with the girl. Some girls have different standards. Some girls are out on a particular night and they just want to have sex. Some girls like to play games. Some girls are looking for a relationship, and in their mind, that's how they get a relationship, is by making the guy chase and making the guy invest. So there is definitely some correlation to who the girl is. But even so, why is it that some guys will get the quick escalation, quick makeout, quick sex all the time, and other guys it'll take forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, okay? 2 things. Number 1, what is your belief system? What is your belief system? If you believe that it can happen quickly, it will likely happen quickly. If you don't believe it'll happen quickly, it will likely take a really long time. So if in your mind you need 4 dates to sleep with a girl, she's all of a sudden gonna need 4 dates to sleep with you. Even if she's the type of girl that would normally sleep with a guy on the first or second date or even the night of meeting him, right? So you're projecting your reality onto her. That's number 1. Recognize that, and that's actually huge. That's actually absolutely huge. I was in Australia. The guy who was assisting me down there, he had really, really good game, but definitely not of the same level that I had. So anytime he and I were in a set together, I would get all the attention, the girls would be on me, the girls would like me more. And anytime he was, even no matter how on he was with a girl, if he brought her around me, she would start jumping over onto me and liking me more. So I clearly had better game than him, more game than him, whatever. But he was able to get these really, really fast pulls that I wasn't able to get. Because my style of game has always been sort of a more slow style where I get the girl to chase me and I get the girl to actually seduce me. That's always been my style. Whereas his style was a lot more like the quick makeout, quick sex, that type of style. He even said to me, he verbalized it, he said, I have a very good rapport with slutty girls. I think we understand each other. That was just like a verbalization of his game. But the fact of the matter is he could get these like 5-minute bathroom pulls, not because he had better game than me, but because it made sense to him that it would happen. It just was in his reality that would happen. And that's absolutely huge. Absolutely huge. That's one of the biggest things I learned on my whole Australia trip is that level of entitlement for the quick stuff, or for the idea that it could happen. Because a lot of times, even to this day, I'll give myself the excuse of I'm in a hurry, so I'm not going to do the approach, right? So say like I'm on my way here, and I see a hot girl. A lot of times like, well, the speech is more important, so not right now. I'm not in that mode right now. And part of it, with the speech, it's a pretty legitimate excuse, but say you're going to something less important. A lot of times it's not a real excuse. A lot of times the reason why you don't want to do that quick set, you don't want to do that not optimal timing set, is that it's not in your reality that it could go well quickly. If you legitimately believe that a lot of girls wanted to sleep with you and within 5 minutes of meeting you, you wouldn't not do a set because you're waiting to do something in 20 minutes. You see what I'm saying? But if it's in your paradigm that you need 4 hours or 7 hours or 20 hours to sleep with a girl, then you're going to look at that situation where you have 20 minutes, you'll be like, oh, not worth it. And then you don't even do the approach in the first place. Okay? So there are two approaches to that. Again, one is become entitled and actually just do it and try for the quick one and just believe it. The other thing is just do it because it's the right damn thing to do. And if you have to get a number and follow up later, do it that way. But don't give yourself the excuse.